Hello everybody, VIDIUM here, and as you know, we're just 1 week away from Halloween. I wanted to take this opportunity to talk to you about some games, a few games that I own that actually makes me remind of Halloween. And although these are not gory games or horror games, they have the Halloween theme written all over them. Okay, the first game that I want to talk to you about is actually my first Sega Genesis video game, and it is because it came with my Sega Genesis system, and it is Altered Beast. Now, this little puppy, actually, it was the first time that I played Altered Beast on any home console. I saw it on the arcades, never actually played it until I got my Sega Genesis. Now, Altered Beast it became one of my favorite video games for the Sega Genesis because it was the first game that I saw on 16-bit on my home, and I actually saw commercials of the Sega Genesis. None of the kids that live in my neighborhood had a Sega Genesis. We all have NES. So I was the first one around my neighborhood or around my block that actually got a Sega Genesis. So it was a pretty big stuff when I actually got this game. Now, I got some information that I actually took out from Wikipedia, and actually Altered Beast in Japan is Juwoki, I believe, if I'm saying it right, and literally it translates to Beast King Chronicles. And it was released in 1988 for the arcades. It was also released for other home consoles like DOS, Amstrad, the MSX, sets that was released on the NES. I actually never saw it. I have to take a look at that, look that up. It also was on the Commodore Amiga, the Commodore 64, Sega Master System. I actually saw it, and to tell you the truth, it moves a little bit slower. I actually like this version better, even though that this version is not arcade perfect. It's not exactly as non. The next game that I'm going to show you is actually, for me, I don't know, but I believe that it is the first fighting game that has creatures of the night in it. I mean, it has vampires, it has the werewolf, it has the Sasquatch, it has ghosts and all that stuff, and it is the Darkstalkers series. Now, this one is the Vampire Hunter, the Darkstalkers Revenge, or Night Warriors on the US. This is the Sega Saturn Japanese version of the game. I do not own the American version, I have the Japanese version. And this is actually the second game in the series. Darkstalker was released on the US, just Darkstalkers, Night Warriors, and Darkstalkers 3, which in Japan is called Vampire Savior. There are actually 5 versions of this game, I believe, if I do not mistake. But I have to say that from all the versions, this one is my favorite, number 2, and it actually screams Halloween all over it. Why? Because you have all the creatures of the night in this game. Actually, this is the second take since Street Fighter and Street Fighter 2 for Capcom at the world of fighting games. This is actually the second game that actually released as a fighting game, and it was a pretty cool concept. I have to say that game that I want to talk to you about, it is my final one. It is actually a spin-off, and it comes from one of the greatest franchises of all time, and it's also from Capcom. This one comes directly from Ghosts and Goblins, and it is Gargoyle's Quest. I got here number 1, which is a Game Boy game. I don't know if you could actually see it, but Gargoyle's Quest was released on the Game Boy, and it was one of my first Game Boy games. In here you actually use that pesky red demon from Ghosts and Goblins that actually comes almost at the end of a sub-level or at the end of the levels on Ghosts and Goblins, and it's really hard to kill. Well, that's the guy that you actually use here. Even though that he's red, and he is mentioned in the game that he is red as flames, as his name says, he's the firebrand. In the box, and the box art is actually green, but what are you gonna do? Now, the thing is that you use Firebrand, who is going to become the new Red Blaze. Now, the Red Blaze is actually a legend on the Ghoul realm, and he's a demon that actually a gargoyle that actually destroyed the Dark Army that tried to take over the Ghoul realm. Now, the Dark Army is back, and you as Firebrand are destined to become the new Red Blaze. Now, the game is not an RPG, but it does have some elements from RPGs, since you have to talk with town folks and you have to gather different items to be able to progress in the game. But the action actually comes as a form of a platformer. Now, the first one is released on the Game Boy, but the second one was released on the NES, which is Gargoyle's Quest 2. There you go. Now, this is the first time that Gargoyle's Quest is in full color, and for the first time it is red. But the game actually follows a very close story to the original one. These two games are very similar. The only thing that this game is larger than the Game Boy. The Game Boy actually is a very short game, but it's very entertaining. It has a password system that allows you to continue. That's the same way as the Gargoyle's Quest 2 on the NES. Now, this game is very obscure. Many people didn't know that this game actually was released for the NES, since it was one of the last Capcom games on the NES. But I really enjoy this game, so try to pick this up. Now, Gargoyle's Quest actually was able to be released on all Nintendo systems back on the day, because Part 3, which is right over here, was released on the Super Nintendo. But this one doesn't share the same name. It is called Demon Crest. Let's see if you can there. Feature. There is a civil war going on, and everyone is trying to get this Demon Crest. The one to actually possess all Demon Crest will give you the ultimate power. Now, this game is very different from the other two. The story is more complex, it's even large, and the power-ups that you actually find is the ability to change into different type of gargoyles that allows you to actually advance in the game. There is a gargoyle for water, there is a gargoyle that has flying powers, and there's a dashing gargoyle and all that stuff. Now, the game actually has two different emblems. When you actually collect all the powers and you have the ability to get the legendary gargoyle, you will be able to fight against the real final boss, which is a really pain in the ass. It's very difficult to play, to beat him actually. But the game is actually awesome. So if you haven't played any of these games, pick them up. There's a guy that I know, I'm not going to say your name, that you just have your Game Boy recently for the first time. This is a very good game to start with, so try to pick Gargoyle's Quest, then go all the way up to Gargoyle's Quest 2, and then Demon Crest for the Super Nintendo. Well, this is my take on these games. I'm gonna be